Without any further ado, first of all, we're going to talk about Bethel. Right here we have the first selectman, Matt Knickebocker. It's great to see you again.
Good to see you, Alan. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Good to have you back. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great to see you because I recall when I was on this show long time ago.
Right.
Although you look great.
Well, thank you. So do you.
I'm trying to get the baby fat off me.
Well, I'm trying not to get any more gray hair. But you know what I do for a living, so that just happens.
Yeah, I hear you. But I remember when you, I was with you on election night.
You were,
when you
yes.
When your first victory. I think, if I'm correct, it was Bob Burke.
Yes.
And Larry Krabus.
Bob Burke and Larry Krabus, that's correct. It was a
so
three-way race, and so none of us had a majority, but I won on a plurality, and I think that it was something like 42% of the vote. So for 2 years, until the next election, the opposition called me the accidental first selectman.
Well, you're not accidental anymore. You won a re-election a few times after since that time.
Well, you got to give them credit for sharp humor sometimes, you know. Politics is like that.
Well, it is Bethel.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So before we get into your record and everything, tell me a little bit about yourself. Why did you get into politics in the first place?
Well, the trajectory that got me into politics started with the Board of Education, because as you probably remember, I spent 10 years as a member of our Board of Ed. Mm-hmm. Seven of those 10 years I spent as chair of the Board of Ed, and what got me into that was some very deep concern about the condition of our schools. And this goes back to the early 1990s, late 80s, early 90s, and I think that most of Marty's viewers, your viewers, are going to recognize today that Bethel schools are simply superb. They're excellent. They have a national reputation at this point. Mm-hmm. They are doing some really groundbreaking leadership things, things like the Pathways to Professions program, which was launched last year by Dr. Carver at the high school. Very innovative program. The language literacy programs. There's so many good things happening in the schools, but you go back 22 years, 25 years, those things were not there, and the buildings themselves were just in terrible shape.
Yeah.
So, so go back in time to 1994. My daughter was at the age where she was about to enter the high school. I went into the high school that August to take a look at it, and if I could have afforded to sell my house and get the heck out of town, I would have. Right. I mean, I was really that disturbed with what was going on, but that wasn't in the cards. Packing the kids off to private schools in Massachusetts was not in my cards. So I decided to put my money where my mouth was, and I started volunteering. So I got on these parent committees. I volunteered for a variety of different things. That was useful in some regards, but not really very satisfying. I really started to see some structural issues within the school district that I thought, and I'm going to admit this is a very arrogant thing for me to say, but given the business background that I have, at that point I'd spent 20 years in corporate management in a variety of functions. I thought, well, if I'm going to gripe about this stuff, I should really step up and put my name on a ballot and try to get on the Board of Education. Right. So my first try, 1997, didn't quite make it, fell a few votes short, tried to get a 99 and got on the board at that time, and then I was on the board until 2009 when I ran for won this seat.
All right. So fast forward to that point when you ran for first selectman. Why did you feel like you wanted to run for first selectman?
Same problem. There were some issues in town. I'm going to take you back in time to 2009. Bethel had some structural issues going on, but what people may remember is that the politics in Bethel were extremely divisive. It was a town at war with itself. They were fighting over budgets, they were fighting over school renovations, and again, I had an opportunity. In 2008, I had gotten laid off from my job with Fujifilm. The photo industry went from film and chemicals to digital. So I had an opportunity. Politics at a higher level was something that I wanted to get into at some point, and I thought, well, maybe when I retire I'll do that. But this opportunity came along, and I said, well, as of now I'm self-employed, so 2009 was the year. I said, I'm gonna try for first selectman and see if I can bring something to the table and make a contribution to the town. So that's when I ran, and fortunately I won. And it's a job I love, I got to tell you that.
Yeah, all right. Well, if you have any phone calls, any questions for Our guest here, the number to dial here is area code 203-792-4101. So I recall when you first, when you won, I was thinking about from a parental point of view, I remember the roads.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the roads were a big problem. And I saw a lot of improvements over the years. Can you tell me some of the major renovations you've done to the roads in the area, some of the big ones?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Al, because in preparing to run for first selectman in 2009, this is just 1 year after the worst global economic crisis since the Great Depression in the 30s. So I was preparing myself, going door to door, to hear taxes. You got to do something about taxes. I don't have any money. I'm unemployed. And what I heard from residents by an overwhelming majority was, I am so sick of driving over roads that haven't been maintained, and I want somebody to invest in my town and protect my investment in the town. So in 2010, we launched the Road Recovery Project, which is still underway. We've paved literally about, at this point, 40 miles out of the 80 miles of roads, all of the major thoroughfares, most of the side streets, most of the cul-de-sacs. We're literally down to like 5 or 6 roads that have not yet been addressed. Now, not all of them needed it, but the ones that needed it badly. So, and we've done all that stuff. You want me to keep going? Or
no. Let's see. We have a caller. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Al. I have a question for the mayor. Mr. Mayor, I want to introduce myself. My name is Rich Frasconi, and I do a show on Comcast, the same channel you're on now, on Monday night called Who's Telling the Truth. And the one thing that I'm very interested in is global warming, but most importantly, I'm interested in solar-generated electricity. And I'd like you to explain to everybody what's going on in Bethel, who I can contact so I can get some good, solid information, because I'd like to do a show on how beneficial, and maybe you can tell us, monetarily how you're benefiting, how the city is benefiting, and what we can do to move forward in the future where we can really start to benefit. And I mean, I don't know if we have solar panels on the schools yet. I don't know what's going on with the new police station, but I mean, we should be having, there is no reason that we shouldn't be benefiting. So, Mr. Mayor, and if you could leave some contact information, because I really want to do a whole show, and hopefully, maybe you can be an inspiration to all the other communities, and we can start to make things happen. So, Mr. Mayor, you got the ball.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for your question. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's something I wanted to bring up. You've from your solar panels to the electric charging stations for your cars.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about what you've done in terms of renewable energy for the town.
That is a great question, and I want to thank the caller for that. So I'm going to give you 2 answers. Number one is 7 years ago we embarked. I proposed to the Board of Selectmen, and they unanimously approved creating an Energy Conservation Commission. And the purpose of that commission was to set up solar panels in the town to actually power town buildings and to sell into the grid. And this was based on the state's newly approved net metering law. And what that says is, in the solar industry, you've always been able to put solar panels on a building and power the building. But what the net metering law did was say, let you put a solar panel here and not connect it to anything, just sell into the grid, and then you take a credit over here in your building. So you get the monetary benefit of it. So we started to set that up. It took 7 years to go through all the legal hassles, had to go back to the state legislature twice to have them adjust the laws. But the bottom line is we broke ground on our solar station in April. It is nearly complete. I was just out there this afternoon, and they're hooking up the wires. So we have 2,900 solar panels. It'll generate, it covers 2.5 acres. It'll generate just under 1 million kilowatts per year. And it will save the town of Bethel in its utility budget somewhere between 10 and 20% per year.
Wow.
Which doesn't sound like that much, but what it does, though, is it locks in. We know what we're going to be paying for solar power, And so we're insulated from those Wall Street price swings, you know, when the price of energy jumps up. And I got to tell you, residential power in this area is going to go up like somewhere between 20 and 25% this year. So the town of Bethel is now insulated from that, you know, to the degree that we can generate the power and use it internally and sell it into the grid. So that is going to be a great thing. Now the caller also talked about what else is happening. Now that we have our solar farm, call it the solar farm, which will be commissioned about the end of the month, somewhere around November 1st is when they're going to flip the switch. We're going to have a nice party. I'll invite you.
All right.
Because we want the press there to enjoy this thing. This was so long in coming. But the commission is now turning its sights to solar panels on buildings, so school buildings and town buildings.
Okay.
And one of the things I think is really cool is solar parking lots. So you put canopies over some of the rows.
Okay.
Then you can charge electric cars. You can, again, feed power into the grid.
Oh, wow, okay.
So over the next 2-3 years, we're going to be working on that project. So there'll be even more savings for Bethel taxpayers. Now, switching to the residential area that he was asking, just tonight, I was at the kickoff of a program called Solarize Bethel, which is part of Solarize Connecticut. And this is an information thing, and what I'm going to ask your caller to do is contact my office first thing in the morning, and we'll get him the information on that. But from now until March of 2018, there is a program where Bethel citizens can get all the information they need on solar. They can have a free evaluation to see if their home has enough sunlight to make it work, and if it's structurally sound.
Okay.
No charge for that. If they choose to go with solar, there are pre-approved vendors who are, in fact, there's one pre-approved installer that was chosen out of like a bidding process out of about a dozen different providers. So there's one that's assigned to the Solarize Bethel project. You don't have to use them, but there's incentives to use them where you can get even deeper discounts and free financing and things like that. So we have a very aggressive renewable energy program in the town of Bethel. And the original charge that we gave the Energy Commission back in 2010 was, number one, save people money, and number two, drop the carbon emissions. You know, this is truly, and really they're not even 1-2, they're side by side.
Right.
Because as you know, Al, we have an administration in Washington that doesn't believe in global warming. They don't believe the evidence right before their eyes. So it's incumbent on communities across this nation to take the steps to think globally and act locally, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, it comes to a point where we can't be looking for DC for all the answers. We've got to take care of our own neighborhood.
Yeah, you can't look to Hartford for answers either. We have to do it. Yeah, right.
Well, let's bring it to let's talk about Hartford a little bit.
Yeah.
Back to education. You know, education has always been a big issue across the state. ECS funding is a major headache.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the ECS dilemma that we have right now with the Republican and the Democrat proposals? It seems like both of them is going to be a hit to Bethel.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I have some friends in Hartford who have slipped me a little information just today.
Okay.
Now, you have to go back a few weeks ago, and of course people were up in arms. It looked like under the governor's order, the executive order, that we were going to lose all $8 million in ECS, and that would be an enormous hit. There'd be no way the town could absorb that without issuing a supplemental tax bill, and this was a very big concern to all of us, especially our residents. It looks now, and I'm going to have to be a little cagey because I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal what I know from the caucuses that came out of Hartford, but it looks like we might get a small hit to ECS, but not something that's going to be debilitating. It doesn't look like it's going to cause any kind of a supplemental tax bill. Like, our residents are probably not going to see a tax increase this year because of this. So my fingers are crossed, because what I heard coming out of Hartford today was actually very encouraging, and for future years actually had some good things for Bethel in it, because Bethel's population is changing. We're becoming more diverse.
Right.
If you look at how we've changed over the past 15 years, for example, we've gone from a 10% prevalence of free and reduced lunch of children living in poverty to over 22% today. We have twice the number of foreign languages, non-English speaking children coming into the district. And those children require more resources. So we should be getting more ECS, not less. So I'm hopeful that the legislature in the next 48 hours gets this figured out, and that we're back on our feet, because we're very financially strong. We can handle what's coming down the pike, but what's fair is fair. We need to have our fair share of that too.
Right. It's again, being a parent and knowing politics is what I do. When it comes down to budgets for municipalities, people need to understand that when it comes to education, that takes up the lion's share of the budget all the time, because you're thinking teachers and staff, and healthcare costs and the rising cost of healthcare really determines how much more you're going to be shelling out in terms of cash.
Yeah. Bethel's no different than any other Connecticut town. Education is about 70% of our total budget. So. Yeah, on the town side, we squeeze pretty hard. And the Board of Ed side, I think I got to give Dr. Carver and her staff credit. They do a great job of controlling spending and doing reasonable things and always reevaluating where every penny goes. So just because they budgeted something in year one doesn't mean that thing is going to come back and be in the budget year two. They go back and they reevaluate things, and they shift resources as they need to address the needs of the children. So I'm very, very proud of the way that our school district and our Board of Ed has handled that over the years. They're good.
Now, I know that you just had a vote that's just happened in the area that I'm sure you're very happy about.
I'm very happy about
Why
that.
don't you explain it to the audience?
Well, we have two elementary schools. Yeah, we have three elementary schools. One of them was renovated in 2001. The other two were really, really getting up there in age. They were beginning to have system failures, roofing failures, heating plant failures. They were not up to code. So that would be Rockwell School and Johnson School. And so their Board of Ed had put together plans that they worked on literally for 5 years. How best to do this, how best to renovate them, and this culminated in a vote, which was unfortunately timed. It happened to be right in the middle of a state budget crisis, which really gave people a lot of trepidation. But in the end, the referendum was quite successful. So in 2019, we will begin renovating both schools at the same time.
Okay.
They're not going to sequence, so we don't have kids going through their entire elementary years in a construction zone. But the sequence will take about 19 months to complete. We'll have the final cost to Bethel taxpayers was about $42 million after state reimbursement. And the reason we had to do that vote now is that the state reimbursement is very high. Next year it's going to drop to a very low level. So even though it's expensive, and even though there was some uncertainty with the state budget, that reimbursement rate is locked in. So it actually protects Bethel taxpayers and gives them a far better value for the money that they put into it.
Now, what was the vote count? How much did it pass by?
1477 yes, 1265 no. So it was like 54% to 46%.
All right, well, again, it just shows that the voters approved it.
Yeah, they approved it very easily. Well, I wouldn't say very easily, but that's a comfortable margin. And I think that even with some of the no vote, I think some of those folks really understood the value, but said, gosh, with all this uncertainty with the state, I just don't know if I can support it right now. But I think we're going to get some good news. But then again, I'm an optimist. I couldn't do this job if I was not an optimist.
Right. Now let's talk about the future, because I always like talking about the future. And a lot of people I talk to, my friends and colleagues, want to know from these candidates, what is your vision for your municipality going forward? So what's your vision for Bethel, primarily the center section of Bethel?
Yeah, well,
what's your vision for that area?
That is a really great story. And I have to tell you something, going from 2009 to today, our retail district is almost 100% leased out. Very, very few vacancies. Probably down to below normal in terms of vacancies. But what's happening in the next year, the 18 months, is the transit-oriented development. The project they called Bethel Forward will begin to take shape and get legs. That has been, planning and zoning has been working on that for well over a decade at this point, and they are now at the point where they're actually approving the zoning changes that will allow developers to come in and start looking at properties and saying we're going to put some new retail here and some housing over there. And what that's going to do is make our downtown even nicer. It's going to make it more walkable, safer for pedestrians and cyclists, slow the traffic down, produce some more parking off-street so you can really enjoy the retail district.
Right.
And I know that our business community is very, very excited about this. They see this as a huge positive. And there's going to be no impact to taxpayers on this.
Okay.
Most of the work downtown is going to be done with grants, with development grants, and the developers themselves pay for a lot of it. That's, like when you put up a new house, usually the town makes you put in a sidewalk, for your section of it.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. So the developers are really responsible for making most of the infrastructure changes, and then what they aren't will mostly be done with economic development grants. So I think the next 5 years in Bethel are going to be very exciting. And of course, these kind of changes boost our grand list and ease the tax burden on other property owners.
And that's one of the big
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing, because another thing people talk about all the time is taxes.
Yes.
They always want their taxes low or stabilized. They don't
Right.
like to see huge spikes because, people work 9 to 5 and they try to
Oh,
get
yeah.
their kids to school, and they want the best quality. So
Right.
stabilized taxes is always a good thing.
It is.
Finally, I just want to talk real quick. You've been first selectman for a while.
Yep.
What do you feel is the biggest lesson you learned as being the first selectman?
Bipartisanship. Absolutely. In fact, that was one of my goals going into this in 2009, is I wanted Bethel to be in the news, not for the reasons it had been. I wanted Bethel to be in the news for good things. And I'll tell you just a quick story. When in my first 2 years on the Board of Education, and this was 1999, so this goes way back. They were very, very divisive years. All the two major parties were just at each other's throats.
Yeah.
And there was a major shift in the Board of Ed, and as a result of that, we had essentially 8 out of 9 Board of Ed members were all Democrats. There was one person who was actually not a Republican, wonderful lady, wonderful board member. She was a member of the Independent Party of Bethel. So we had a good board. We did some good work. Fast forward 2 years, 3 Republicans got on the board in that election in 2001. And I will tell you this, and this is not I'm not throwing my colleagues under the bus, but having that dynamism, having the point of view that was different, made that a better board. And that was a wake-up call for me. I said, this single-party rule is not the way to go. You want to bring people into the process, because the more diversity you have in that, the better your result is going to be. Now, you do have to have people that are willing to compromise, and they're respectful, and they're willing to listen to others. But if you can get that going, bipartisanship can produce far better results than just having one party call all the shots.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that's wrong in local politics as well as national politics, is that everybody's out to win at any cost. And I think there needs to be more cooperation between the parties and between the individuals. And I think we've achieved that. I'm very proud to say that our Board of Selectmen that served together now for 8 years, just to give you another example, there's an old trick. If somebody says, I put a motion on the floor to do X, Y, Z, if nobody seconds that motion, it's dead. There's no discussion.
Right.
Rich Straighten and Paul Zakowski and I made a deal on day one when we were sworn in. We will always second the other guy's motions so they can be discussed in public and voted on. Always. We have never violated that.
That's good. That's good. Bipartisanship is really important, because we live in a diverse society, very eclectic, and everybody has different points of view. And one of the reasons why I like Bethel is that you have a referendum style of government, unlike Danbury, town meeting government. So you get different points of view. Everybody comes together. You have to come together for the common good, but everybody's working for the common good. If you come out of your house and go to a town meeting to discuss a matter, it means you really care about your community.
Yes. Yes.
And those voices should be respected and represented in the decisions that you make in the future.
That's true.
Yeah. So look, it's great to see you. Really great to see you. It's been a long time, and I hopefully see you a lot more down the campaign trail.
Well, you're always welcome.
Yes.
Stop by the office. I'll buy the coffee.
All right. Now, if people want more information about your more information about you, have questions, how can they contact you?
They can contact me through Town Hall. They can also find information about me on the town website, and also on the Bethel Democrats campaign page, which is BethelDemocrats.com.
And also, you know, since I've been gone for a while, the social media has picked up a lot, and I see you a lot on social media. You answer questions from constituents on Facebook, which is a great thing, also.
Well, you know what? It's another tool. I remember in one of my re-election campaigns, my opponent criticized me. He says, "You spend all your time on Facebook," and I said, "You know, I don't actually spend all my time on Facebook, but it's like, you know, 100 years or 50 years ago, you would spend time on the telephone talking to constituents. People choose to contact me through Facebook and sometimes through Messenger. So they will contact me with questions about our town. They're legitimate questions. I will answer them. That's part of the deal. I think you can't ignore social media anymore.
No, you absolutely cannot. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, again, thanks a lot for coming in. I'll see you on the campaign trail. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Al.
All right, everybody. This is Matt Knickebocker, First Selectman for the town of Bethel.